before we get started on any of the stuff last week. Dealt with a lot of issues last week. Any questions that anybody might have? Anyone? What is your overall opinion so far of the book and his teaching? Boy, you guys are quiet as a mouse. Sierra said she always loved Maxwell. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, that's the way I feel, Devin. I feel that him teaching it does more than me just teaching it, even though after each of the sections I'm able to share a few things and so on. So hence my reason for just using him to teach it, and he wrote it, so he ought to know what he's talking about. So that's good stuff. So anyway, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start with number 5, which is the law of E.F. Hutton, and be taking notes, etc. And then we'll discuss this one after he's through. So no one else has anything else to say. We're just going to get started with it. And let me go ahead.
Number 5 is the law of E.F. Hutton. The law of E.F. Hutton simply states, when the real leader speaks, people listen. Now, a couple of these laws in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership are related. For example, I have found that the law of E.F. Hutton is closely related to the law of influence. Remember, the law of influence basically says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. The law of E.F. Hutton says when the real leader speaks, people listen. But let me talk to you about this for a moment, because I have found that this is a key in understanding people. For example, what I have found, and there are so many examples I could give you in the law of E.F. Hutton, what I have found, for example, in a group, and let me go back to my team and using this kind of as an illustration. What I have found is that if you get in a group of people and there's a decision to be made, the people in that group will automatically look at who the real leader is. They just will. For example, let's just say Bridget is the real leader on the team, okay? What's your name? Rob John's my name. Nice to meet you. Okay. Rob, let's say we're in this group, and Bridget's the real leader, but Chuck he's kind of got the floor. He's talking about something that he'd like to see passed on the team level or whatever. Okay, now, if Chuck's talking about something he thinks very important, and maybe it's a budget item, and maybe he's wanting some more money for his area or whatever it is, okay, here's what I'm saying. If Chuck's talking about something that's very important, of which a decision is going to have to be made, but if Bridget is the true leader, I mean, she's the real leader, she's the influencer, she's the E.F. Hutton, it's Bridget E.F. Hutton, okay? Got the picture? Here's what I found. You and the rest of the team, while Chuck's talking, are watching Bridget. Because what you're doing is, she is the E.F. Hutton. She is the real leader. And you're watching Bridget because she's going to, by her actions, give you some kind of sense of if she's excited about this or not. Does it make sense? And if for example, if Bridget starts nodding while Chuck is talking, the rest of us, we kind of smile a little bit and we start nodding while Chuck is talking. And Chuck's talking. You know what Chuck's thinking? He's thinking he's doing a good job. Chuck's saying, oh, this is really good. They're really, hey, I'm glad I prepared this speech. I'm really doing good. Well, Chuck, you're doing good. But that isn't why we're excited. See, we're nodding because E.F. Hutton, Bridget here, the real leader, she's nodding and we're getting her signals from her. Just ask Chuck, if you were given the same speech and Bridget's got her arms crossed and it's kind of like, well, we don't want to do that, we're not, and we all start crossing our arms and Chuck, you start saying, man, I'm not doing a very good job with this. Well, no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. You see, the issue is not whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. The issue is that E.F. Hutton either likes it or don't like it. And we take our signals always from the real leader. Now, let me just explain for a moment. This is very key in leadership. Let me give you a pointer here, Chuck, that'll help you. But if you've got a proposal and you want the rest of our team here to buy into your proposal, what you really need to do before you have the meeting with us, you need to take Bridget to lunch, and you need to have a meeting with her, and you need to be saying, Bridget, I just want you to understand that this is important, and you want to get her buy-in. In fact, Chuck, if you're a smart leader, when you come to the meeting, if you've had the meeting before the meeting, again, remember? If you had the meeting before me, if you're really smart, when you do it, you'll say something like the rest team. You'll say, team, by the way, Bridget and I have talked about this, and we think it's a good idea. Woo! That does a lot. See, because all great leaders take the vision, Chuck, from me to we. And until the vision is a vision of we, it's not a great vision. And what you need to do is you need to understand who the influencers are. You need to know who the E.F. Huttons are. And this is very key, because what I have found in leading now for 30 years, I have found that a leader's responsibility is to pick out who the E.F. Huttons are. And you know what? Bridget may be one of the influencers, maybe one of the E.F. Huttons. What's your name, sir? Jay? Jay may be one of the influencers. And see, as a leader, I say, okay, man, I need Jay in this project. I need Bridget in this project. What's your name, sir? Tommy. I might say, okay, I got to have Tommy in this project. Okay, what I do is, here's what I want you to know. There may be a couple of hundred people in the studio, but what you have to know is you have to go to the influence. And if it's Jay, and if it's Tommy, and if it's Bridget, if these are the people that are the influencers, I need to bring them in because they're the E.F. Huttons. And when they speak, they're going to carry the ball for me. In fact, here's the way I have always tried to do it as a leader. I've never had a meeting with everybody until I've had meetings with the key people. And if what I would do is I'd walk into a room like this and I would say, listen, gang, I'm very excited about a vision. I'm very excited about something I want to share with you. In fact, for the last couple of days, Jay and Tommy and Bridget and I have been talking together. And what we've decided is this is the best way for the organization. In fact, let me tell you something. Tommy gave me a thought on this that's just tremendous. And I'll throw in a Tommy thought. And you know what? When we talked about this, Bridget said we ought to do this. And Jay, what you said the other day about this, you know what I'm doing? I'm tying them all in. So they're not just following me. They're following E.F. Hutton Jay. And they're following E.F. Hutton Bridget. And they're following E.F. Hutton Tommy. Because the real leaders have the influence, and when the real leader speaks, people listen. Haven't you seen this happen where somebody stands up and speaks, and as they're speaking, nobody's paying any attention? Huh? Haven't you seen that? You know, I mean, I've watched them. You know, somebody's up there just speaking, and nobody's home. Nobody's home. In fact, there's been a lot of times I wanted to stand and say, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. None of us are home. I know you're exercising your jaw a little bit, but we're not listening." Remember, I'm kind of old, so I remember there used to be a TV show called The Gong Show. Yeah. And what happens, somebody's up there speaking, and when people get tired of speaking, somebody could take a big mallet, go over and gong that sucker, and they had to be done. I've always thought, every business meeting needs a gong show. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know. And when somebody's up there and you're just tired of hearing, you say, "Could I have the mallet, please? Could I have the mallet? Not the ballot, please. The mallet, please." And just go over and gong that sucker and let it be done. Let it be done. Because the law of E.F. Hutton said, when the real leader speaks, people listen. That's why it's so important for you and I to understand that we've got to be more than positional leaders. And in your notes, let me explain the difference between positional leaders and real leaders. Positional leaders have a title, but not always a following. Where real leaders have a following, but not always a title. Positional leaders influence positional people. I've seen that happen all the time. "Oh, you're Dr. So-and-so. Well, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Here's my card. Here's your card." The only people, a lot of times, positional people lead or control or influence are positional people. But real leaders, they influence everyone. In fact, let me put it this way. When you have to tell people that you're the leader of the pack, you're not. And every once in a while I have somebody say, well, I just have to declare my leadership. I just have to stand up and say, hey, 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 hey. I'm the leader. Follow? That's why I love the leadership proverb. It says, he that thinketh he leadeth and hath no one following him is only taking a walk. And don't you know, okay, people taking walks? Why? They're taking walks because they're not E.F. Hutton. So what makes a real leader? What defines a real leader? Look at your notes, because I think this is huge. Real leaders become real leaders because of character. In other words, who they are. Real leaders become real leaders because of relationships, who they know. Real leaders become real leaders because of knowledge, what they know. Real leaders become real leaders because of intuition, what they feel. Real leaders become real leaders because of experience, where they've been. Real leaders become real leaders because of past successes, what they've done. And real leaders become real leaders because of ability, what they can do. What I just shared with you about real leaders becoming real leaders, spend some time there. Ask yourself, am I a person of character? Do I have good relationships with people around me? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I sense what's happening to those around me? Do I have good experience? Have I had some good wins under my belt and some past experiences? And do I have just good, decent ability? Because the law of E.F. Hutton says, when the real leader speaks, people listen. Law.
Okay, so the law of E.F. Hutton. When the real leader speaks, people listen. Any concepts there that you'd like to discuss? What I want to do before that, let me share with you. He went real fast there at the end, but those are real important. So I'm going to share those with you so you can write them down and have them. When he was talking about what defines a real leader, character, who they are. Relationships, who they know. Knowledge, what they know. Intuition, what they feel. Experience, where they have been. Past successes, what they have done. And then ability, what they can do. So any thoughts, any questions on the law of E.F. Hutton? Positional leaders have a title, but not always a following. And all they do is influence other positional people. But real leaders have a following, but not always a title. He tells a story. He didn't tell it here, but in his original teaching that I heard on this subject, he told a story that was very, very instrumental to understanding the law of E.F. Hutton. And it was this: when he went to a certain church, one of the first churches that he pastored, he said he realized at the first board meeting that he wasn't the leader. And the way he realized he wasn't the leader is because in the first board meeting, he mentioned that they needed to do something as a church, and he noticed that everybody turned and looked at Claude. And Claude didn't think they ought to do it, so then nobody thought they ought to do it. And he realized that night, in his first month as being the pastor, that he wasn't the pastor, he wasn't the influencer, Claude was. So rather than butt heads with Claude, which would have been a losing proposition, and he would have eventually had to leave the church, he had the meeting before the meeting, and he worked through Claude. And every time when he was going to have a board meeting that week prior to the meeting, he would call up Claude and he would say, Claude, can I come? Claude was a farmer, and he'd say, Claude, can I come out and can I just follow you around on the farm today? And Claude said, sure, Pastor, come on out. He said on this one occasion, he said they were trying to reach new families. In order to reach new families, they were going to have facilities for children's programs. And he said he had walked down into the basement of the church, and he said there was about this much water in the basement of the church, and mold was all up and down the walls of the church. And so that, when he wanted to approach it at the board meeting, he went to Claude that week at his farm prior, and he said, by the way, Claude, he said, we're trying to reach a lot of new young families and their children and so on. Claude said, yeah, I know it, Pastor. He said, well, we need to have a place for those people to meet, those children to meet. And he said, Claude, have you been down in the basement lately? Claude said, no, Pastor, haven't been down there in years. He said, I was down there the other day, and he said, there's water on the floor and there's mold on the walls, and there's no way we could have the kids down there. Do me a favor, Claude. He said, go down there this week before the board meeting and look at it and see what you think. Claude said, okay, Pastor, I'll do that. So Claude goes down and says, the next board meeting, he said, I share a couple things, and then I say, does anybody else have anything to share? And Claude says, I do, Pastor. And I said, okay, Claude. And he said, we're trying to reach young marrieds and the kids and everything. Have any of you guys been down in that basement lately? No, we haven't. Claude said, I was down there this week. And he said, there's mold on the walls, there's water on the floor, and we got to do something about that. And he said, I make a motion that we spend the money to fix up the basement so we can have kids in there. And someone says, well, I second it. And they all said aye. And what happened? He got the basement fixed up. Now somebody says, well, that sounds like manipulation. Let me give you another word, wisdom. It's not manipulation, it's wisdom. He would have got nowhere with fighting against Claude. So he had the meeting before the meeting. And the more you function in leadership, the more you're going to realize the importance of having the meeting before the meeting. Because if you don't have the influencers on your side, you are not going to make much progress. Any questions, any thoughts? The law of E.F. Hutton, which simply states, when the real leader speaks, people listen. Okay, if not, the law of solid ground is number 6.
6 is the law of solid ground. And the law of solid ground says trust is the foundation of leadership. In fact, an expression I've used often that's in your workbook is this: trust is the glue that holds an organization and the leader together. It's the glue. I want to talk to you about trust, and I want to talk to you about integrity. I want to talk to you about character. And in fact, to build trust in your notes, there are 2 things that you must, as a leader, be able to do. You must demonstrate consistent competence. Obviously, you have to consistently be competent in the area in which you're leading. And secondly, you have to demonstrate consistent character. You have to consistently be a person of integrity. And I can think of no law that probably is more important to share with you than this law. And so allow me just to talk to you about a couple of experiences I've had. Recently, I was being interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, and the person that was interviewing me said, John, I would like to talk to you about business ethics. They said, in corporate America, things are not going real well, and there are a lot of leaders that have probably violated the trust factor. So he said, if you don't mind, I'd like to do about a 30-minute interview with you on business ethics. And I know I shocked him, and I said, we don't need a 30-minute interview on business ethics because there's no such thing as business ethics. It got real quiet on the other phone. And the interviewer said, well, I'm talking about, what I'm talking about, all this business ethics that we've had and all the corporate side and how that these leaders are just not really trustworthy. And they said, I want you to talk to me about business ethics. And again, I said, I'll be glad to talk to you. But I said, there's no such thing as business ethics. Then I said, there's just ethics. You either have it or you don't. And can I tell you something? If you have ethics, guess what? It works in business. And if you don't have ethics, it doesn't work in business. If you have ethics, it works in your community. If you don't have it, it doesn't work in the community. There's no such thing as family ethics or community ethics or business. No. There's just ethics. You got it or you don't. You're either a person of integrity or you're not. You're either a person that has character or you're a person that doesn't have character. And then we got into an amazing, wonderful 35-minute conversation about integrity and character and ethics. Now, what I want you to understand about this law of solid ground is that it's character and it's also competence. I don't in any way want to take away from the issue of competence. You have to consistently perform well if you're going to lead. And you have to consistently do right if you're going to lead. And you can't substitute, you can't say, okay, I'm a person of character. I want you to follow me because I'm true to my word. I won't tell you a lie. I'm a great person of integrity. Oh, by the way, I'm a lousy leader. I'm not competent, but follow me. I don't want to follow somebody that has great character and low competence. Do you? The good news is you can trust them. The bad news is you trust them in bad places because they didn't lead you well. So it's not like I want to have you to have character without competence, but I also don't want you to have competence. In other words, be a very good leader, understand and have leadership skills and abilities. I don't want you to be a great leader and lack character because I'm not going to be able to trust you. And one won't substitute for the other. And what we have to understand about the law of solid ground is that in the law of solid ground, we either grow and get better in this area and increase our trust level, or we decrease it and we become worse in it. And the best way to explain this perhaps is to illustrate it. And if you allow me, Chuck, let me illustrate with you, okay? The best way I can explain this law is building trust is like having change in your pocket, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, let's say that I just come to the company. I'm the new kid on the block, and I have a kind of a leadership position, and you want me to do well, and Chuck, you're kind of like chairman of the board or whatever it is. Okay, so anyway, what you do is you give me X amount of change of which I am to operate. In other words, you feel I'm trustworthy. You hired me because of character. So okay, and what you're going to do is I'm going to either, because I'm a trustworthy person when I come to the company, I'm going to either increase the change or I'm going to decrease the change. For example, let's say I don't have very good character. I lack integrity. I'm not trustworthy. I don't always tell the truth. And so let's say, I've been here maybe 3 or 4 months and you ask me about a report of which I make an excuse which you know is not true. Well, every time I do something that's not trustworthy, I give up some change out of my pocket. Do you see what I'm saying? But it's okay because I still have change. And as long as I have change, I can still operate because there's a certain level of trust I still have. But let's say a month or two later, you find that I'm not trustworthy in another area, and perhaps I've gone over to Bridget's office, and again she comes here and says, you know what? I don't think he's truthful with me in this matter. Well, every time what happens is every time I don't do well, I give up change. But it's okay because I still have some change. See, as long as I have change in my pocket, I can operate. Well, let's say a few more months go by, and And now there are other people who are beginning to talk about the fact that I'm not probably a person of my word, and that they're not sure they can really trust me. And so you talk to me about it. And so now what happens is there's a day when I do something I shouldn't have done, and I walk in the office, and what I've been doing is I've been using my change. I've been living off of goodwill. You follow me? I've been living off of the slack that you gave me. And this time, Chuck, I come in the office and you say, John, here's another issue, and I reach automatically. What I do, I reach in my pocket. And isn't it interesting? Instead of changing my ways, I want to live off of goodwill. And this time, when I reach in my pocket this time, and when I do it this time, this is a picture of a leader in trouble. I'm out of gas. I have no more change in my pocket. It's over. I'm going to have to go to a new organization. Why? Because I have used up the change in my pocket. Now, as I can deplete it by doing things lacking character and lacking integrity, it's also true that if I do things that show character, I increase my change. I was just reading the other day, and this is huge, about a CEO that told his employees, brought together a company meeting, and he said, let me tell you something. If anybody in this company asks you to do anything that's wrong, here's my personal phone number. And anybody ever asks you to tell a lie, anybody ever asks you to fudge a report, anybody ever asks you something that violates your integrity, he said, you don't need to go to your supervisor. He said, you call me immediately. I thought, what a huge statement. Well, Chuck, if I'm trustworthy and you begin to see that I am a person of my word and that I do follow through and I do take responsibility, what happens is you start giving me some change. And so I come back. Chuck, look at that. I love this. Come here. Hey, Chuck. Now, Chuck, I've given him a 5. I've given him a 20. I've given him a 50. I even gave him $100. I mean, I gave him some bills. You got me? So when Chuck is now giving me back change, he looks through all the bills and gives me a 5 back. I mean, Chuck, he's very stingy now. He's slowly, he's all right. If here's 5, here's 5. Now let me just stop here for a moment because Chuck and I didn't plan this at all. We're just talking. But I want to tell you something. This is exactly the way it works. Listen very carefully. In the area of character, you lose it a lot quicker than you get it back. And when you start violating issues of integrity with people, and they begin to realize that you've probably manipulated them, violated them, I promise you that as you try to build that trust level back, they'll dole it out $1 at a time. You lose it a lot quicker than you gain it. Does that make sense? Now, what's happening here in this illustration with Chuck is, if I continue to be trustworthy, Chuck will give me a little bit more change. And you're still going to the lowest dollars, aren't you? And I say thank you. And by the way, every time he gives me a little bit of change, boy, I've got more change in my pocket. And then we come up with another time, and I do. And I'm just showing trustworthiness. I'm showing character. I'm showing integrity. I'm making right decisions. Maybe not even good for me, but good for the company. And I get a little more. And every time, wait, Chuck. And you know what? After a while, I start liking our meetings. Because I'm liking our meetings because I'm gaining change. I had a guy one time tell me, he said, well, I don't like my board meetings. I don't like my meetings when I get the key players together. And I said, it's because you're losing change. Let me tell you something. If you're losing change with people, you don't like meeting with them. But if you're getting change, if you go to a meeting, you're going to get some more bucks, huh? Well, you say, this is going to be a good meeting. See, you're either building in, you're either depositing or you're withdrawing in this area of solid ground and trust. And so I do well and I get a little bit more. And this is the 4th time you've given me something. 3 times I had all the money to you, and it's taken, but I do well. I keep coming back, and finally I get that last piece. Now here's what I want you to see. Here's what I want you to see. You're on solid ground when you walk around your company or you walk around your department or your place of business, and your pockets are loaded with change. In fact, if you have to walk around with a limp, why are you limping? I'm just loaded with change. That's your goal. In fact, the goal of a leader is to increase his or her change in their pocket. In fact, let me say this. Hang on. Here we go. You cannot make changes in the organization unless you have change in your pocket. It takes a lot of change in your pocket to make big changes in your company. Isn't that true? But if there's a high integrity level, there's a lot of trust level, and the law of solid ground is there, you can make a lot of huge changes. It can be very, very successful, but it takes change in your pocket to make changes in your organization. And I want you just to take a moment and look at a couple of statements I have in your notes. Statements such as, a leader cannot continually break trust with people and continue to influence them. Oh, the questions are huge. Questions such as, do I have change in my pocket? Is my change increasing or decreasing? Do I pass the integrity test? Somebody says, what's the integrity test, John? The integrity test is this. With integrity, the longer I lead, the better it gets. Without integrity, the longer I lead, the worse it becomes. That is so true. The law of solid ground says trust is the foundation of leadership.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Very good. Any thoughts? Talk to me. What did you learn from that? The law of solid ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership.
I liked when he said that people don't want to follow someone with character, but with low competence. And I feel like that's something that I have been very challenged with forever, but like a lot since internship and stuff, is knowing that I have the ability and I have the skills to, but not always following through, or not always following through timely or well. And I mean, that kind of speaks to having character. People want you to do it, like for you to do it, but am I doing it well?
Okay. Anyone else? Devin said, it's very good. As I grew up as an intern, Pastor Caleb gave me little things that he trusted me with, and when I followed through on what he trusted me with, he trusted me more. Yeah. Trust is a huge thing. The things you're looking for when you're bringing on staff, not only in a church but also in your department, and listen carefully to me. You look for it in three. You look for three things: character, chemistry, and competency. Character, chemistry, and competency, in that order. Why in that order? If the person doesn't have character, you can't teach character. So the first thing you're looking for is character. The second thing you're looking for is chemistry. Do they get along well with the other people? Is there chemistry with the other people on the team, or will they not get along with each other? And then the third thing is competence. Competence is important, but it's not as important as character and chemistry. Why? Because you can teach competency. You can't teach character. And so character is vital, that we develop character, that we have integrity. Anyone else? How about a leader cannot continually break trust and lead? You can't continually break trust and lead. Someone talked to me about his illustration of change in your pocket. How important is that? Anyone? It's vital. It's vital. Because if you've used up all your change, you have nothing left to use as a bargaining chip. You have nothing left When you make a mistake and you have no change, it's over. Okay. But if your pockets are full of change, that to me, of almost everything he says in this whole 21 irrefutable laws, other than maybe the law of the lid, that concept of the law of solid ground, character, integrity, building change and in trust, etc., is probably one of the most important. And if I were you, I would read that over. I would read that in the book again. I would listen to it again. This concept of building trust and how vital it is. Okay, anyone else? Before we go to number 7. Okay, number 7 is the law of respect. The law of respect.
Law number 7, the law of respect. The law of respect says people naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. Now, I've got a question I want to ask you, because this law of respect really has huge implications in your leadership life. Here's the question. And in the studio, while I'm asking my friends in the training tapes, I want to ask you the very same question. How many of you would like to lead more people and a higher quality of people at the same time, huh? In other words, how many of you like to have increase your quantity and increase your quality? Now, if you raise your hand, and they all did here, if you raise your hand, I'm here to tell you that the law of respect will teach you how to do it. And the best way that I can illustrate how the law of respect plays into not only leading more people, but leading a higher quality of people, let's go back to the hand illustration I used when I talked to you about the law of the lid. If you remember when I talked to you about the law of the lid, I said, if you're a leadership, if this hand represents my leadership, and let's say it's a 4, and this hand represents my business, so the lid of my leadership will contain or hold down my business. If my leadership is a 4, my business is a 3. You know, it's just not going to go any higher. It's going to be contained under my leadership effectiveness. Now, when I was teaching that law, I was talking about the size of your organization, and that you cannot grow an organization bigger than you are. And that's very true. The law of respect, I'm using the same illustration now. You not only, if the law of the lid will not only allow you to grow an organization bigger than you are, it will not allow you to attract people better than you are. Let me explain. If I'm a 4 as a leader, okay, if I'm a 4 as a leader, the people I attract to me will basically be 3s, 2s, and 1s. Does that make sense? In other words, when we teach the law of magnetism, which is another law, which I will teach later on. When we teach the law of magnetism, the law of magnetism basically says you attract who you are, not who you want. Well, in the law of respect, I'm saying people follow leaders that are strong themselves. So in other words, if I'm a 4 as a leader, I'm not going to attract a lot of 7s and 8s. 7s and 8s aren't going to follow me. And I have a quote in your note this is huge. It says, the more leadership ability a person has, the more quickly he or she recognizes leadership or its lack in others. Now, that is just a huge statement. So let me explain what I mean by that. Haven't you been in a room where perhaps you were a better leader than the person that was leading? And you realized that you were a better leader. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about thinking more highly of yourself than you should. It's just the fact that you knew you were a better leader. Now, if you're a 7 as a leader and you happen to have to follow a 4, you're not going to want to do that. In fact, that's why there's so much frustration in the workplace. Isn't that true? There's frustration in the workplace because you got people that are perhaps better leaders that are underneath a lesser leader, and it causes all kind of conflict. Now, here's the good news. Let's go back to the illustration I used of the hand again. If I'm a 4 as a leader and I go from a 5 to a 6 to a 7, in other words, I can learn leadership and I grow. I learn these laws. I apply them in my life, and over the process of time, I become a better leader. If I go from a 4 to a 7, not only do I increase the quantity of my organization from a 3 to a 4 to a 5 to a 6, I increase the quality of people I attract. All of a sudden, if I'm a 7 as a leader, I'm attracting 6s. Now, think about it. As a 4 of a leader, I was attracting 3s. Now, what I'm saying to you is I've now doubled the quality of a person that I've attracted. And this is huge. And here's why it is. I was doing a couple of years ago a national conference for Chick-fil-A. And during a question and answer period, a person raised his hand and he asked me this question. He said, John, how do I find leaders, find potential leaders? So I want to find potential leaders for my organization. And when he said, how do I find potential leaders? I looked at him and I said, you have to know what they look like. But let me say something else. You can't attract potential leaders if you're not a leader yourself. Like begets like. So in this law of respect, what I'm saying to you is, as you grow as a leader, you're not only going to increase the quantity as far as the size of your company, you're going to increase the quality, the kind of people that you attract to it. And here's why. People don't follow people by accident, and people don't follow people that are not good leaders. Let me explain it to you this way. When people respect you as a person, they admire you. And it's wonderful to be admired. When people respect you as a friend, they love you. But when people respect you as a leader, they follow you. I remember several years ago, I did a lesson called RESPECT. Tell me what you think of me now. I didn't sing or dance. But basically, I was trying to share with people how important it is to have respect. Now, what I want you to understand is respect is not a given. It's earned. In fact, if you think back at the law of influence, when I taught you about the 5 levels of influence, I taught you that the highest level was the personhood level, and the key word there was respect. People follow you because you've done so well with so many for so long that you've absolutely gained their respect. Now, you have to gain respect. It's not a given. It's something that has to be earned. So in your notes, let me share with you how to earn respect, how to gain respect from other people as a leader. Number 1, have a respect for other people. It's very important for you as a leader to be respectful of other people. The best way I can explain it is I observe leadership and observe leaders all the time. And I mark a man or a woman, I mark a leader if they don't respect their people. For example, I think it's a character flaw. For example, if I'm leading and you happen to be the people that I'm leading, you happen to be my people, I think I look for a leader to have respect for the people with them that, quote, this is not a good phrase, but I'm going to just use it to illustrate people that are under them. Here's what I want you to understand. When a leader powers up on people beneath them, or takes advantage of people beneath them, or manipulates people beneath them, or doesn't respect people beneath them, I think it's a huge character flaw. In other words, when you have power on people and you misuse that power, I think you have violated your leadership. Does that make sense? And it's amazing how a person behaves, quote, when they can get by with it. Did you get that? And when a leader can, quote, get by with treating people unkindly or kind of, quote, running over them or taking advantage of them, whenever I see that happen, I always look at that leader and I realize that they have a character flaw. Because the best way to get respect from other people is to give respect to people. And the moment that you and I do that, then respect begins to be returned to us. So step number 1, I suppose, really has nothing to do with leadership. It has to do with the golden rule. It has to do with respecting other people. The second way to gain respect is by courage. I have found that in the area of leadership, people will respect you when you make a courageous decision. And I define a courageous decision this. A courageous decision is one that I make because it's right, not because it has a probability of passing, or not because it benefits me. It's just a right decision. That's courage. The ability to be courageous and step out and make decisions that benefit your company but don't benefit you. Benefit your people but don't benefit you. That's a courageous decision. Thirdly, I think that you earn respect by success. People want to follow successful people. Let me put it this way. Have you ever known somebody who said, I'm just looking for a leader? Have you found a leader that just fails a lot? Man, I would love to. Are you a leader that messes up? Do you just kind of get into dead end streets and kind of blow yourself out of the water? Because what? Could I attach myself to you? I've never known a person who said, boy, if I could just have a coach that's a bad coach. You know what I'm saying? Boy, if our team could just get a coach that loses all the time, that would be huge for us. No, you got to have success because people want to go to the top and they want to get with people who can take them to the top. So if you want respect, you've got to get some success under your belt. Number 4, consistency. Just the ability to keep on keeping on and day in, day out, be the same. Consistency is huge because people want to follow somebody that they not only trust, they want to follow somebody that's dependable. Number 5, you gain respect when you add value to others. Oh, I love that. The ability to add value to others, to come alongside of them and really take them to a level that they would not go on their own. That gives you respect. And finally, number 6, just pure leadership ability. The ability to lead people effectively is absolutely important in gaining respect. Now, let me just close this law of respect by sharing with you that there are 2 what I call kind of like acid tests of respect. In other words, when people come to me and they say, John, do you think I have the respect of people around me as a leader? There are 2 ways that I can always look. I can look at you, I can look at myself, I can look at anybody in a leadership position, and I can tell you how you could know if you have the respect of your people, and you can go to the bank on these 2 things. The first test of respect is the response of people when you ask for commitment. They will only commit if they respect you. I have watched it happen time and time again. When you have a group of people and they don't make the commitment necessary, it's almost always a lack of respect to the leader. And the second area, the second test of respect is the response of people when the leader asks them to change. You show me a group of people that will make big commitments and major changes. I will show you a group of people that highly respects their leader, because people will not make commitment and not make changes unless they really respect the leader. You don't do that for somebody you don't make changes. You don't make commitments for somebody that you don't respect. So when somebody comes to me as a leader and says, John, do you think my people respect me? I ask them this very simple question. Do you find the people that work with you, do they make commitments, major commitments, and do they make major changes for the organization to be successful? If so, they respect you as a leader.
Okay. Now here's what I'd like to do with this law. Number 7, the law of respect. People follow leaders stronger than themselves. I want each of you to share with me one concept out of that law that spoke to you. Okay? One concept that spoke to you. Deborah, go ahead. Who was that? Katrina?
Katrina.
Yeah, go ahead, Katrina.
I think the last part really hits home for me because I think sometimes I have the respect of our team, respect of our leaders, but when it comes to that commitment time and I don't see people coming through for us, that's when I realize, man, maybe they don't have respect for us. And that's not more just like, oh, like they have to do what I'm telling them to do, but there's just nothing in return as far as like any commitment to follow through with a task or etc. So that last part kind of was just like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. And now let me talk to you about that, Katrina. Number 1, it could be a sign that they don't respect you, like you're talking about, and you're wondering if that's what it is. Let me tell you something else it could be. I'm not negating the importance of that, but let me tell you something else it could be. It could be the fact that they're already overloaded with other ministry responsibilities. What we have to realize, and listen carefully to me when it comes to leadership in the church, it's one of my pet peeves, is if we're not careful, we overload good people to where we've given them so much responsibility in so many different areas that they're not able to follow through sometimes in like in your area, as an example. So what you have to do now with that information, Katrina, is you have to determine whether you think it's, number one, the fact that they don't respect you, or if it's number two, the fact that they've got other responsibilities in ministry and in the church, and they're spread so thin they can't follow through. And if that's the case, you need to do them a favor and let them concentrate on some things rather than on everything. Okay? Just a thought. Just a thought. I'm looking there at what Sierra said. I like when he said that to gain respect, we must add value to others. If people don't feel properly resourced, they'll be less motivated to follow through. Right. And we're to add value to people. Okay, very good, very true. Stephen said, I really like the tests of respect, that it's measurable enough. It's measurable through others' commitments and willingness to change. This follow through is also a goal of leadership. So this can be a way to measure your effectiveness as a leader. Very true. What have I got? Devin and Kaylee left. Give me a point.
Dr. Cook, it's underneath my comment where I said, as I grew as an intern, this one underneath it says, I love when he said people don't follow others by accident. They follow for the reason that you are respectful and responsible.
Okay.
A lot for me, because when I was growing up as an intern and leading these students, I kept thinking they're just following because they have to, or following because it's a title. They're not following by accident. They're following because they actually respect you and you respect them and you're responsible.
Sure. Very good. Very good. Okay, Kaylee?
A point that stuck out to me was kind of the same as Katrina, where I've felt the weight of having leaders that don't necessarily follow through at all times, and it doesn't really seem like, our ministry is like high on their priority list, but and then, that's kind of, I have in the past, like before this, thought like, well, it's probably a lack of respect. But then a lot of times I've chalked it up to, what am I doing that is gaining their respect? Like what kind of leader am I being? And so that kind of him saying that has stuck out to me, and kind of makes me think of what kind of leader am I being that deserves respect.
Good. I liked the way he said how to gain respect. Number one, have respect for others. I think if you don't respect others, people aren't going to respect you. I really resonated with his concept that when he sees leaders, no matter how big their church is, where they do not respect people, to him it's a red flag. Okay, you have to have courage, success. Number 4, consistency. Consistency is powerful. People are looking for consistency in our lives. And if you will follow through and be consistent in your life, your ministry, and your leadership, others will follow. They're drawn to consistency. When you don't feel like it, when you'd rather give up, when you'd rather quit, but you're just there, you're consistent. That's powerful. Adding value to others. Our goal as leaders should always be to add value to other people. And then, of course, pure leadership ability. And then the tests of respect. People's response when you ask for commitment, and response when they're asked to change. speaks volumes. So the law of respect is a powerful law. And I'm glad that it resonated with you. Okay, number 8 is the law of intuition. So let's go to number 8, the law of intuition.
The 8th law is the law of intuition. And the law of intuition says basically, leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. Now, let me say something about this law, the law of intuition. This is so important. In fact, let me say this. The best leaders, when I shared with you on one of the other leadership laws, the law of process, about our leaders born, and I told you that some people are born with leadership leanings, let me say this. Of all the 21 laws, this law is most closely associated with people that have what I call leadership leanings. If there's a law for, quote, the natural born leader, it's the law of intuition and it's the law of timing. Because those are the 2 most difficult laws to learn. They're the 2 most difficult laws to teach. And so therefore, while I'm teaching them to you, I want you to understand, I realize I have a major task in front of me for the next few minutes. And the reason they're the most difficult to teach is because intuitiveness and timing are very subjective. And only people that have natural leadership bents naturally pick them up. So if you don't have natural leadership bents, you can learn to be intuitive, but it's going to be a long process. I promise you that. Well, let me give you the flip side for a moment. Probably no law of leadership puts a leader at an advantage more than the law of intuition. And let me tell you why. In the law of intuition, basically, it allows you, the law of intuitiveness allows you as a leader to see things and sense things more quickly than anyone else, and it gives you a distinct advantage of a leader. Let me give you an example of that. I can win a 100-yard race against the fastest human being in the world if there is a condition. Look at this body, there has to be a condition. I can run a 100-yard race against the fastest human being in the world if I get a 50-yard head start. And I just want to stop here for a moment and say I have carefully considered the 50-yard head start. And I'm starting to say I maybe need a 60-yard head start. And you say, well, of course you can win the race. Of course you can win the race if you have a 50-yard head start. It's the whole point of the law of intuition. You know what the law of intuition is? The law of intuition gives you a head start on everybody else. In other words, it allows you to win the race. The fastest person doesn't win the race in leadership. It's the person who got started quickest. Understand that. And the law of intuition gives you what I call the leadership jump start. It allows you, it allows me to get going before anyone else can get going. And therefore, we get to the finish line first. And somebody says, well, how did you get to the finish line? Are you the fastest? No. I'm not it's not the fastest, it's the first in leadership. And what you have to understand is the law of intuition allows you to be first. So, let me see if I can do a good job teaching this law. The first statement I want to make is this one. In intuitiveness and in intuition, it's important for you to understand who you are, because in the area of intuitiveness, here's the way this works. Who you are determines what you see. In other words, if I'm a leader, I see everything through leadership eyes. If I'm a navigator, I see everything through a navigator's eyes. In other words, you and I see not what is, we see by who we are. Classic example is every once in a while I'll do something that's way out of my gift zone, just for an experience. I had a wonderful friend who loved nature. And I remember we used to go on hikes together. His name was Paul. And Paul would say, oh my goodness, did you see that bird? Did you see that ground? And he'd talk about all these things, and no, I didn't see it. Well, Paul said, it was right there. It was right over there. Didn't you see it? No, I didn't see it. Why did Paul see all of nature and I didn't see a lot of nature? Because intuitively, that's who he is. He's a nature lover. I'm just a Mr. Magoo walking through the field. not having a clue what's happening. Who you are determines what you see. For example, my gift is communication. I do communicating almost every day of my life. And so whenever I have to communicate, whether it's in training sessions like this or in major auditoriums and stadiums across the country, it doesn't matter. I'm not nervous. I'll be honest with you, I just don't get nervous. People say, well, are you uptight? No, I'm not uptight. I'm going to go out and do what I love to do with people I love to do it with. And I'm going to have a great time. And so I enjoy it. Why? Why? Because it's my gift. My wife, Margaret, who in her earlier years was a school teacher by profession, communication is not her gift. And I always hate it when somebody, because, you know, they say, well, would you come and speak to us? Ask Margaret to come and speak to us, because if they ask Margaret to come and speak to them, I know what's going to happen. She's going to come to me. She's going to say, John, you know, they want me to speak over here. What should I say? Now, let me just stop here for a moment. If you don't know what to say, communication is not your gift. What do I say? So over the years, because we've been happily married for well over 30 years now, she knows that no longer does she come and ask me what to say, because I say, Margaret, you know, so now she'll say, okay, don't tell me what to say. She said, just tell me, how do I get started? How do you get started? And like maybe she's going to go speak at a banquet, I'll say, well, you know, just kind of listen to what people say before you speak and play off of them. And somebody says something, you get up and you just start talking about that. And she hates that answer. Well, I'm not trying to confuse her, and I'm certainly not trying to frustrate her. It's how I do it. Why would I do it that way? It's my gift. It's who I am. Now, let me flip it for a moment. Let's talk about clothes. You don't know anybody as bad at matching clothes as me. I mean, I have this clothes closet, and I have been known to go into my clothes closet, close the door, and just stare at stuff. You know, for 15 minutes, paralyzed. I'm a leader. I'm paralyzed. Kind of drools coming down on me. Mary will say, John, are you in the closet? Yeah. You need help? Go, yeah. And she'll come in and say, what are you doing? And I'll tell her what I'm doing. And she'll say, oh, wear this sweater, these slacks, and these shirts. And she'll pull everything together. And she'll throw it kind of to me, kind of like I'm a piece of garbage or something. I'm a beggar collecting things. Oh, thank you. And she looks at me, and she'll tell me the same time, she said, John, why haven't you figured this out yet? Because she'll go in and say, she'll try to help me with colors, and she'll tell me all these principles and all these laws of the clothes closet. And she can't figure out why I can't get it. Well, I can't get it because it's not who I am. It's not my gift. I'm not intuitive in that area at all. Now, what I do is, when she'll say, okay, this sweater and these slacks, man, what I'll do a lot of times is what I've done, I'll put the sweater and the slacks on the same hanger. And then the shirt, you know, and I'll get on, and so I'm just set, because this is really great, because then I know, you know, sometime when I don't have time to ask her, I'll just put them on. And so maybe a week later, I'll go in and put the outfit she gave me a week before on, and I'll be so excited because I know they match. And I'll walk out, as soon as she sees me, she'll look at me, she'll say, are you wearing that again? Well, yeah, I could wear the same thing every day and be a happy man. Oh, she said, that's so boring. She said, you wore that last week. Don't do that. She said, people will see you. Then she'll go in and she'll take the same sweater, put it with a different slacks and different shirt. And I know she does that just to mess with my mind. And it works. I'm totally confused. Or I love it. Sometimes I'll get dressed and I'll sneak out of the house before she's up, and I'll come back and I'll walk in the house and she'll look at me and she'll say, did you wear that? It's on my body. And she's saying, did I wear that? No, I'm buck naked. It's a mirage. You see. Or I want to say, no, I had a good outfit. I changed in the garage before I came in the house just to mess you up. Now, what you have to understand is, Margaret still, to this day, can't figure out how I can't figure it out. It's not who I am. Here's what I want you to understand, and here's the key point. You're intuitive in the area of your giftedness. So whatever you're gifted in, you're intuitive in. And leaders are readers. They have the ability to read a situation. Why? Because they have some leanings in giftedness and intuitiveness in the area of leadership. So they see everything through the leadership grid. And what do leaders read and what do leaders sense? Since leaders are readers, what are they? Leaders are readers, number one, of people. They have the ability to see people. Not only just see people, but to understand where they are. Classic example, when I'm in a conference, if Margaret, my wife, happens to be with me, sometimes at the end of the conference, she'll say, a guy came up to you in that gray sweater. What was he talking to you about? I don't have a shot. I don't remember anybody coming up in a gray sweater. I don't remember anything that anybody wore. And she'll say, the guy with the gray sweater, the guy with the gray sweater. I don't remember the guy with the gray sweater. Why? Because she's very color conscious. I'm not conscious. If I could figure it out, I could tell her who was that talked to me and basically what they said. But see, I'm a reader of people. I'm not reading what you wear. I'm reading where you're going and who you are and what you're thinking and where you are in the group of people. Leaders are readers of people. They have a sense of where people are and how people feel and how people think and how people are responding. They pick up on that. Their leaders are readers of opportunities. Oh my goodness. They see an opportunity coming. In fact, they're kind of amazed. They look around and say, doesn't anybody else see this opportunity? Am I the only one that's getting on the opportunity bus? And they are. They get on the opportunity bus, and everybody else, they're around the depot, having a croissant, you know what I mean? They don't have a clue. They don't even see the bus. Leaders are readers of opportunities. Thirdly, leaders are readers of the environment. They have a sense of what's happening in the environment around them, and they can feel things. Number four, they're readers of timing. They understand the ebb and flow of timing and when to seize the moment as they can and when to let the moment go. Number five, they're readers of motives. They have the ability a lot of times to not only see what a person does, but have a sense of why they do it. They're readers of the future. I'm not talking about some kind of a person with a crystal ball, but they have a sense of what's coming around the corner. They can sense what's approaching and what's up in front of them. Number seven, leaders are readers of the placement of people. They know where to put people. They have a sense of what people's giftedness are. And so they kind of say, I think they would maximize their potential in this position. And finally, I think leaders are readers of the process. They understand process well. They understand that it not only it takes a while for them to develop in a daily sense, but they also realize it takes time for people. And they can kind of look at people and know where they are on their journey and how far they are from becoming the leader perhaps that person wants to be. But here's what I know. Leaders are readers of people. And the law of intuition basically says that if you can be intuitive, you get a head start. Now, one more comment before I go to the next law. If you find that this isn't a strength of yours, and many of you will be very frustrated with this law because it's a little bit subjective, I would just suggest a couple of things to you. One is find an intuitive leader and hang out with them. Because I have found that if you hang out with an intuitive leader and ask them questions about why they did this or why they said that or why they went there, that many times they'll give you a read of how they can see things. And if they give you a read of how they can see things, they'll begin to teach you to see those same things. I would say, secondly, also, is lead out of your gift mix. Whatever your strength is where your intuition is. So therefore, for example, when you get to the law of navigation, if you're a good navigator, like Chuck is, it's very simple. What you do is you start leading out of the day-to-day navigating with people, and you'll find that you're very intuitive in that area. Stay to your strengths because it's in your strengths that you can lead people effectively.
Okay, so the law of intuition. Leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. You see things, as he said, we see not what is, but we see by who we are. And you're intuitive in the area of your giftedness. You can see things in your area, of giftedness that other people can't see. But then as he was sharing about his clothes and his wife's gifted in matching clothes, etc. He's not. It makes no sense to him. Hence our need of other people. both in our marriage relationship as well as in our church ministry relationship. We need, because we're intuitive in our area of giftedness, and we're not intuitive in areas where we're weak. We need people on board with us who are strong where we're weak, and they will evaluate everything through their strength, and it will help us to grow. Any questions or comments or thoughts on the law of intuition? Anybody has? Very interesting law. Okay, let's go to the next one. The law of magnetism. The law of magnetism.
In the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the 9th law is the law of magnetism. And the law of magnetism says who you are is who you attract. Let's do an exercise. Since this is a training and leadership type of an exercise, I realize that maybe we'll even want to turn off the tape for a few minutes and do this on your own before you proceed. But let's do an exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to write down the top 3 qualities in people that you would like to attract to your organization. Now, as you write down the top 3 qualities of people that you would like to attract, I want to just take a time out for a second and let you do that. In a moment, I'm going to come back and I'm going to let you look at those 3 qualities, and I want to do my teaching from what you put on paper.
Which we're not going to do, but, for sake of time.
Now that you're back, let's look at those 3 qualities that you have placed on the piece of paper. I want you to look at them because whatever 3 qualities that you have placed on your paper, what I want you to understand is this. You won't attract people because these are 3 qualities of people that you want to attract. You will only attract people of these qualities if you possess these qualities yourself. For example, on my piece of paper, I said if I'm going to bring people around me, I want to bring people that have leadership abilities, I want to bring people that have integrity, and I want to bring people that have a great attitude. Now, those are 3 important things to me. Integrity, attitude, leadership abilities. Those are the kind of people I want to attract. Now that I put my list down of the 3 qualities of people I want to attract, the question I've got to ask myself is not where are those people? The question I've got to ask myself is, do I possess those qualities? Because if I possess those qualities, if I'm a good leader, if I have a great attitude, if I'm a person that's filled with integrity, if I possess those qualities, I'll attract people because like begets like. So every once in a while, what I do is I run into leaders and they'll say something like this. They'll say, John, I need a person of high energy in my company. Boy, we need some initiative, high energy people in my company. And whenever they say that, I look at them and say, let me ask you a question. What's the question? Do you have high energy? Do you take initiative? Because if you do, I got good news for you. You'll attract people like that. But can I tell you something? If getting out of bed is a challenge every day, you understand? And you need a nap in the afternoon, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to attract a lot of high energy people. Because high energy people don't look around and say, man, do we need to find somebody that's slow and lazy. If I could just see somebody that's moving, but you can't tell they're moving, that's the kind of person I want to be. No. Like begets like. Al McGuire, who's now passed away, who was a very successful basketball coach for many, many years at Marquette University, had a statement that I just love. In fact, I like it so well, I put it in your notes. He said, a team should be the extension of the coach's personality. My teams were arrogant and obnoxious. And let me tell you something, he was. And that's what his teams were. In other words, he put himself, who he was, became who the teams were themselves. This is just an absolute fact. It works in your life, and it works also in my life. I was doing a leadership conference, and we were, again, in a question and answer period, and a fellow raised his hand, and I said, what do you want? And he said, I love this leadership stuff you're teaching. And he said, I got a question. He said, he was a young kid again. He said, I've decided I'm going to be a leader, which was nice. Okay. He said, the question I have for you is, who should I start leading? And I looked at him and I said, the first person you should lead is yourself. Yourself. In fact, let me put it this way. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else follow you? Now, this goes back to this law of magnetism. What are you and who are you on the inside? Because here's what I want you to say. You're going to attract people just like you. So what I would do as a leader is this. When I defined and understood the 3 or 4 or 5 top qualities of people that I wanted to attract to my organization, I would make sure 2 things. One, that I had those qualities in my life. And if I did not, I would make sure that I began to discipline myself to have those qualities in my life. Because who you are is who you attract. That's the way it works. It works that way every time. It works that way in the business community. I have the privilege of being with many companies, organizations, and corporations, and can I tell you, they all have a personality. When I'm out with the Walmart people, these are people that get up early, and these are people that love numbers and figures. If you go to one of their early morning Saturday morning meetings, not during the week, they do theirs on Saturday morning, they get all the stats from all the regions all over the country of how their Walmart stores are doing, and they're up early, and they're beating those numbers, and they're putting them up there, and they're saying, you made it, you didn't make it, you were short this week, and this is how quickly. They love accountability, and they love getting up and doing something just early and making sure that, you know, they're kind of the early bird gets the worm kind of a mindset. Now, that's who Walmart is. That's a culture. And they attract, what kind of people they attract? They attract those kind of people. I go with other companies and they love to study. They just love to learn and grow, and they're kind of, they have a growing personal growth type of a culture and environment in them. And as long as they're growing and as long as they're learning, they know if they can grow themselves, they're growing their company. So they want a lot of meat. They want to keep saying, okay, how can I develop myself? And they're always wanting programs to develop themselves. Now, what I'm saying is every organization has its own personality, but here's what I know. The culture of that organization determines the kind of people that they attract to it. What I have found is that there are some key areas of attraction. In other words, what I want to do is I want to define for you certain areas that the law of magnetism I know works for a fact. For example, number 1, your mission. Your mission of your company attracts a certain type of a person. That's an absolute fact. And when you put your mission out, can I tell you what your mission does for your organization? It divides people. It attracts people who are like that and have a desire to have a mission like that, and it repels people who have no desire to be like that, and that is certainly not their goal or mission in life. So when you lay out the mission, you attract certain people and you repel people based upon what your mission is, what you're trying to accomplish. Another area, number 2, is priorities. Whatever your priorities are in your organization and whatever the priorities of the leaders happen to have, can I tell you something? That's the kind of priorities that the people are going to have. For example, when I gave the illustration under one of the other laws about the CEO that looked at the people and says, if anybody in my company asks you to do anything wrong, here's my personal phone number, you call me. Do you know what he was doing? The law of magnetism was operating. You know what he was? He was attracting people of integrity. He was attracting people who want to do the right thing. He was attracting people who said, yes, I will call you if somebody asks me to do something wrong. He was going for a high integrity, high character type of person with that kind of statement. It's the law of magnetism. So your mission attracts certain people. Your priorities, and it has much to do with the kind of person you attract. Number 3, age. I found that people group together by age to a certain extent. And I found that you get into certain organizations, they basically age with what the leaders are. And you get into some companies and they just got a bunch of young people and they're just kind of going after it as fast as they possibly can. And age has a lot to do with the type of person that you attract to yourself. Number 4, your values. Oh my, this is huge. The values that you have are going to do a lot with what kind of a person that you're going to attract to your organization. For example, a high value to me, is adding value to people. That's a huge value. That's right at the top for me. If somebody says, John, what do you want to do in life? It's very simple. My life is very simple. I want to add value to you. I want to come alongside of you. I want to write books that add value to you. I want to do lectures and teaching and tapes that will add value to you. I want to add value to you. My greatest goal is to take people to a higher level than they could ever get on their own. That's my desire. What kind of people do I attract? I can tell you what kind of people I attract. People that want to add value to others. I don't attract selfish people. I don't attract people who are kind of basically in it for themselves and taking the journey by themselves and hoping to, at the end, to have just some huge reward that they give only to them. I don't attract selfish type people. Why? Because it's a value. The law of magnetism says you attract basically who you are. Number 5, another area I have found is to be very true, is in the area of background. A lot of times we attract people that have the same kind of background. Maybe it's we grew up in the same area, and so therefore we have common roots geographically. Perhaps we had common roots as far as our education, or perhaps the kind of business we're in. But basically we attract people a lot of times based on our background. And then finally, the other indicator of the law of magnetism that's a key area of attraction is attitude. You attract people based on your attitude. Can I tell you what you've never found? You never found an organization where you've got a great attitude at the top and a poor attitude at the bottom. You don't see that. Attitudes come in. You know what? People with bad attitudes, they don't even want to be around people with good attitude. It's that too much cheery stuff. You know what I'm saying? It just kind of weighs on them after a while. You're just way too happy for me. You're too excited about life. So people with bad attitude, they're not attracted to people with good attitude. They don't even want to be around. I love what a guy said, well, if you have a great attitude, you'll attract everybody. I said, no, well, you'll make some people sick. So like I said, I can't stand that person. They're happy, they're enjoying their life, they're going somewhere. Who wants to be happy, enjoy their life, and go somewhere? Could I have another cup of coffee, please? Now, those are areas that if you possess, will bring a sense of magnetism to you, and you'll attract like people. It's just an absolute fact. So look at your organization and ask yourself, who are we? Because by answering the question, who you are, what you value, what is your mission statement, what your attitude is, what all that stuff is. And I would encourage you, this is a great exercise for you to do as a group. Once you get, quote, your DNA, your personality as a company or a culture, once you have figured it out, just understand this. You're going to attract a whole bunch of people just like you.
Okay, a couple things that I would like to share there is I've shared these two things many times before, and one of them is a church tends to eventually take on the personality of the pastor. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the way it happens. That's why when he said you attract or repel people with your mission statement, your priorities, your age, and your background. Your age and your background speak strongly into this. And the church eventually takes on the personality of the pastor. The second thing I've said oftentimes is you reproduce who you are. And that's basically what he's talking about with the law of magnetism. You attract who you are and you reproduce who you are. You don't reproduce who you think you are. You reproduce who you are. And that's why it's vital that we do everything possible to not only become spiritually healthy, but also to become emotionally healthy. Because we all bring baggage into our relationship with Christ. We all bring baggage into the ministry. And if we don't get emotional health, if we don't get help with the Holy Spirit in becoming who we should become, we will be developing people like we are with that baggage. And we don't want that. So that's the importance of making sure that we're emotionally healthy. Okay. The next one is the law. Any questions or comments on that law? The law of magnetism. Anything strike you strongly that you'd like to share or say? Okay, number 10 is the law of connection. The law of connection.
The 10th law of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership is the law of connection. The law of connection says leaders touch a heart before, maybe you need to underline that word before, they ask for a hand. In other words, when you really understand the law of connection, you realize that you have to touch a person emotionally and relationally before they'll ever begin to do things in a physical sense with you. You've got to touch their heart before you ask for their hand. This is a tough law for a lot of leaders because leaders are action oriented, and a lot of times leaders don't want to mess with the relationship stuff. They don't want to mess with the connection stuff. They just say, look, here's where I'm going, and I want you to go with me, and let's go. And they don't want to do what I call the homework and the preparation needed for relationships. But let me just say this to you. I think to a great degree, relationship is leadership. Let me put it this way. People won't go along with you if they cannot get along with you. You don't want to take a trip with somebody you don't like. You don't want to take a long journey with somebody that you don't get along with. And every one of us know what it's like to work with somebody that we don't get along with. And you know, the good news is that you can work with them. The bad news is you don't want to take a vacation with them. Isn't that right? How many of you know at least one person that you don't want to take a long trip with? Oh, yeah. How many of you are seated beside that person right now? Don't raise that hand. Those second questions I ask you are always IQ questions. Keep your hand down. We all know what it's like. Every one of us know what it's like to have to work with people we don't care for. And that whole relationship, it just doesn't mesh. Now, here's what I'm saying. Leaders understand that they've got to connect with the heart before they can ask the hand. Going back to when I was doing the law of influence, going back to that for a moment, the second level in the laws of influence or the laws of leadership, the second level was the permission level, and that is people do things with you because they like you. So you have to begin to become likable. Starts with your appearance, starts with your face. Don't you just look at some people sometimes and just say, I don't care to meet them? Huh? Haven't you been on an elevator and somebody gets on the elevator and you just look at it? You just look at them. They don't say a word. They haven't said one word. They haven't said a word. Do you know one? They just get on the elevator and just look at them and just say, oh, thank God I'm not going home with them. And it amazes me, especially leaders who have to be in the people business, it amazes me how many of those leaders aren't good with people. And I just want to go up and do I say, man, you don't have a shot at this. You're never going to be successful as a leader because people don't relate to you, not connected with them. That's why, 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a book called Becoming a Person of Influence. And I wrote the book, Becoming a Person of Influence, and people look at it and they say, it's a relationship book because I talk about 10 ways to influence people. Well, it is a relationship book. You know what it really is? It's a soft leadership book. It teaches you how to influence others and relate to them because, again, if you do not touch your heart, you will not be able to ask for a hand. Now, this is an area that I love because I love communication and I love connecting. And just let me try to get real practical with you and help you walk through this area of connecting with people. And I want you to know, before I give you the list, I would want you to know that I think connecting with people is a leader's responsibility. A lot of times I'll run to leaders and they'll say to me, well, my people my people aren't coming along. And when I was a kid, I used to go down to General Electric where they had where they had the shipping area, where trains were coming in and unloading stuff and they're picking up stuff. And I love to just go out there and sit and watch the trains come in and couple and uncouple the cars and the whole deal. And you know what I always noticed? I always noticed that the locomotive always was responsible to back up and couple with the other cars. I never one time saw a boxcar running around the track saying, man, where's the locomotive? I know that. No. If you're the leader, And by the way, when they would come back in and they would hit those cars, that didn't mean that they connected with those cars. They didn't connect with those cars just because they hit them. Just as you don't connect with people just because you had a meeting. They had to learn to couple those cars. Once in a while, I'll run to a leader and say, well, I had a meeting with him. We had lunch. Hello. You got to connect. You have to couple. So how do you connect with people? Number one, connect with yourself. The first thing to do is to be able to connect with yourself. Let me just put it this way. If you have never connected emotionally with yourself, you'll never be able to connect emotionally with someone else. You have to know yourself. You have to accept yourself. You have to love yourself. You can't love someone else if you don't love yourself. You can't relate to others if you can't relate to yourself. If nobody's home internally, there'll be no one home externally. Connect with yourself. Number two, share with openness and sincerity. What I have found is that it's just best to be open and sincere with people. It develops a sense of trust. Number three, live your message. Very simple. What you ask your people to do it. In fact, a leader should never ask his or her people to do something that leader is unwilling to do themselves. Remember, be a tour guide, not a travel agent. Don't send people, take people. Live your message. Flesh it out. They ought to be able not only to hear your words, they ought to be able to see your life. And let me tell you something, hearing your words and seeing your life ought to be the same. And when what you say and what you do, when your behavior and your words match, it's just tremendous what you can do as far as leading and developing people. Number four, know your people. Very simple. You cannot lead people until you know them. You have to know what the keys to their life is. You have to understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. You got to spend, and the only way that you can know your people is to spend time with your people. That's why leaders walk slowly through the crowd. What was it? Many, many, many years ago. Management by walking around. Boy, that became huge, didn't it, across America? But it's just a trick. It's a great concept. Still is. Walk slowly through the crowd. Spend time with your people. Understand them. Get to know who they are. Know their strengths, their weaknesses. If I could stop right now and ask you as a leader, what are the key points of the people that you lead? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do they do well? What do they love? What do they buy into? What don't they buy into? What are their values? If I could ask those kind of questions, would you be able to give me answers, or would you just be given kind of shots in the dark on your people? See, leaders understand that you don't lead everybody the same way. People have different strengths, different giftnesses, different desires, different goals. And the great leaders understand the only way you can lead people effectively is by knowing them well. So know your people. Number five, communicate on their level. Don't communicate on your level. Come down to where they are. Understand what they're thinking. The expression I have is put the cookies on the lower shelf. Let everybody have one. Don't be an educator. An educator takes something simple and makes it complicated. Be a communicator. Take something complicated and make it simple. Get it down to their level so they can understand it and grab hold of it. Number six, give yourself totally to the people in the message. Whatever your vision is, whoever your people are, give yourself to both. Don't be a leader that buys into the vision and not the people. A leader that buys into the vision and not the people will be a leader who has a vision only for himself or herself. And don't be a person that buys into the people and not the vision. The good news is you have great relationships, but you aren't going anywhere. Buy into the vision and the people. Both are essential. Number seven, believe totally in the people and the message. Believe totally in the message and the vision and the people. Here's what I love, and I think it's very true. It's wonderful when the people believe in the leader, but it's even more wonderful when the leader believes in the people. Be a leader that believes in your people. Number eight, share how the vision or the message has touched you. The only way that anyone else will buy into the lesson, the message, the vision, the mission that you're on, the only way they'll ever buy into it is if you say, look, here's what it's doing for me. Here's the areas of change I'm bringing in my life to bring this vision to pass. Always let them see how it has positively affected you before you ask them to let it positively affect them. And number 9, offer direction and hope. Come alongside of them and offer direction and hope. And remember this, leaders are dealers in hope. Somebody comes up to you and say, what are you? You say, I'm a hope dealer. A classic example of the law of connection is Herb Kelleher, the CEO of Southwest Airlines. Several years ago, I think it was in USA Today, I read these following words, and I want you to see them because this is classic law of connection. Thanks, Herb. This was paid for by his 16,000 employees on Boss's Day. Thanks, Herb, for remembering every one of our names, for supporting the Ronald McDonald House, for helping load baggage on Thanksgiving, for giving everyone a kiss, and we mean everyone, for listening, for running the only profitable major airline, for singing at our holiday party, for singing only once a year, for letting us wear shorts and sneakers to work, for golfing at the Love Classic with only one club, for out-talking Sam Donaldson, for riding your Harley Davidson into Southwest headquarters, for being a friend, not just a boss. Happy Boss's Day from each one of your 16,000 employees. That's the law of connection.
Okay, let's do the same thing with this law, the law of connection. One thing from everybody that connected with you on this law of connection or impacted you. Who's going to go first? Each person, one thing.
I liked the part where he said, don't be a travel agent, be a tour guide. Yeah, I just think many times, like for myself, I've had to remind myself, like, because I'm asking them to do something. For example, young adults, we had a devotional daily Bible reading plan that I had them record and send, and so that way I can post. And I made it to a point where I said, I'm going to do this. And usually I'm a behind the camera type of person. I am very much, I am what you would call an ambivert. So I'm introvert and extrovert. So usually I don't do those things. But I knew that I needed to be that leader to say like, hey, like I'm going to do what I'm asking you to do. Also, I'm going to show you also that, hey, like I'm going to do this too as well. Like not just trying to like give out tasks or give out things to do, but like to walk that with them. And so sometimes I just always have to remind myself like, hey, like I need to be that leader too. I need to show them. I need to let them know that, that I'm going to do it as well. Like if I'm just not just telling you to do it because you guys are my leaders or you're, so what he had said about don't be a travel agent, be a tour guide.
Okay, good. I see Sierra put there, I think it's important when he mentioned sincerity. I know I feel repelled the most when I'm expected to follow a fake leader. Very true. Very true. The rest of you, one concept from this law. Stephen, giving yourself fully to both the vision and the people. That is not just the fulfillment of the goal, but it's the relationships of the people around you as well. Very true. Yes. Good. Someone else.
There's a lot of good stuff that I remember him saying, but one thing that he said that you can't lead people if you don't know them, and you can't lead people all the same. Like it's not just cookie cutter, but you have to walk through crowds slowly and get to know your people, not just know them as a whole, but know them individually.
And that walking through the crowd slowly is hard because leaders are always in a hurry. Leaders are always busy. They've always got somewhere to go. They've always got something to do. And sometimes in our pushing through, we don't even realize we're passing by the people. And we need to learn how to stop and walk through the crowd slowly. Devin said, people are the most important part of the organization. It's important to make sure that you show them love, appreciation, respect, and encouragement. It's important that we see the people who work with us feel like they're appreciated sincerely. Very true. I don't think it was in this class that I mentioned this. It was in some class, probably for another school. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned this. I don't think it was in this one. If it was, forgive me. But going along that line, when I was getting my master's and my doctorate, I would go down to Southern California to the university that I was in, and for classes, for week-long classes. And when we went to that location, the classrooms, it was this long, real high tower-like building, and the classrooms were either on the 3rd floor or the 5th. And so rather than walk up 3 flights or 5 flights, I would usually get on the elevator and go up. And one day I'm getting on the elevator to go up, and one of the maintenance men of the ministry there was on the elevator going up to take care of something up in the tower. And I just happened to ask the man, I said, well, how long have you worked here at this, it's a church, it was a church and a seminary. How long have you worked here? And I forget how long he said, but it was something like 25, 30 years. And I said, my goodness, you've been here a long time working on maintenance here at this ministry. And I said, what caused you to stay here this long? And with tears in his eyes, he said, I'm one of, I don't know, 40 or 50 maintenance men. This church has thousands of people. But he said, one day I was working out there in the yard and Pastor Jack walked by and he stopped. And he said, I didn't even know he knew my name, let alone anything else, but he called me by name. And he said, I've heard that your wife's in the hospital and I want you to know we're praying for her as a staff. And with tears in his eyes, he said, he knew who I was. He knew who my family was. And that caused me to be committed to work here. Why? He added value to the man. He felt important. He felt a part. And that's vital that when it comes to this law, excuse me, this law of connection. Sounds like my night's about over. I don't know about yours, but my night's about done. So we're going to call it a night. Hopefully this was beneficial. I always enjoy listening to these teachings, reading the book, so may I encourage you to keep up with it, keep reading it, and we will keep listening to the videos. And our night's over, so have a good evening. See you next week.
Good night.
Good night.